I am Nita Little. I'm here at the Freiburg Festival, and I'm being interviewed for the ECITE Festival to talk about contact improvisation, its past, its present, and its future. I am a person who was present at the early stages of contact before it even had a name, and have been working with it ever since. And I am now getting my doctorate, a PhD at the University of California at Davis. And that work is about the articulation of presence and how, it's called Articulating Presence, Creative Actions of the Embodied Mind in Dance. I might change it to Creative Actions of Attention in Dance. My reason for doing that is making that little change is because I want to be very clear that the body is a mind and the mind is a body, that my work is to talk about the body-mind. So when embodied mind suggests that, but it maybe doesn't go quite clear enough, close enough to that. My that dissertation, that work, it emerges from contact improvisation and my work with contact improvisation. I've been invested in understanding the mind and levels, states, and qualities of attention since the very, very beginning of contact, when I was interested in knowing how my presence, how I was being, influenced what I could do. So the relationship between being states and physicality and my physical choices seemed really important. And so that has become a lifelong study, which now, at some point I decided this is really a big subject and I'd really like to talk about what I've come to know, what I've come to understand, and present that to dance generally, to the contact community certainly, but also have it be available for a broader community. And to do that I thought I needed to be able to speak in a voice that understands more about what's known in the world, not just in my dance world, but in the world, and in order to speak maybe functionally and accurately, and with a voice that would be heard. I didn't think that my previous dance voice was enough to be taken seriously. And with a PhD, maybe I'll be taken seriously, at least that's the hope. I have an ability to sound like I know what I'm talking about. It's all a goof on some level. It's just who I happen to be. I get very committed to to ideas and ways of considering things, so I think I'm really needing to offset that with knowledge and having a community that checks me out. And getting a PhD, I have a community that checks me out. I have always been kind of committed to a cutting edge, both in my physicality and in my mentality. Not that those are separable. Part of my cutting edge is it's about the motion, the movement that happens. As a body-mind, what can be known, how I know, when I know, the questions being developing answers that aren't necessarily normative. They don't necessarily fall within the range of what is maybe normative Western ideology about what people are and what people can do, what people can know and how people know. I just started a blog that I call Peripheral Intelligence. So to get to it, you go to peripheral-intelligence.com, because other peripheral-intelligence.coms will take you to something slightly militaristic. They're trying to protect the borders, and I'm trying to say, hang on. The borders, the periphery, is where we have intelligence. There's an incredible intelligence that needs to be paid attention to. And that intelligence does not show up as centralized conscious thinking. It doesn't show up as what is normally understood as cognition. It shows up not just as inside the skin even. So it doesn't show up as normative somatic intelligence, although it includes that definitely. It's intelligence that we can move us, kinds of knowing. I'm interested in kinds of knowing, and one of them I'd call peripheral. Not one of them, many of them I'd call peripheral intelligence, and that probably needs to be a plural. Intelligence says. Doesn't work as neatly on a website, on a blog, to call it a plural, but yeah, I'm interested in the plurality. I'm interested in all the differences that exist along the periphery, and part of what makes a peripheral knowing so brilliant is that it comes with many different kinds of knowing, not simply visual knowing, not simply tactile knowing, but all of the knowing that goes into the way our senses organize synesthetically, meaning synesthesia being when one sense informs another, and that information, that coupling, that interplay becomes another unique sense. So it's quite complex. I'm really interested in complexity.
But you think it's the vehicle of development for contact improvisation?
I think the second you start to talk about a body-mind instead of just a body, you start to open up possibilities. And that's why I consider contact a moving form, a form that is shifting and changing into new potentials. I don't think it's a fully developed form. I think it is a form on the move. And I hope it remains that way. Because as far as I'm concerned, dancers are explorers. I'm interested in a dance form, and this is what is specific and really fascinating about contact, is that it's a form that I think, and maybe the first dance form, that is based in inquiry, not knowing. It's based in the need to know, the questioning, the desire to know what's there, what's next, how's this happening, and all of the questions that cause us to think experientially differently. And when we do that, we come up with unique capabilities. We have, I think one of the questions I got was about the plasticity of the brain. Well, for me, this whole form is a brain. It's a mind, body. And it is, when I think of it as a brain is not a mind, a brain is an object. A mind is motion. And that's a big difference. And the motion here moves well beyond this flesh form. So I'm invested in developing language that can articulate self-knowing, the understanding on an ecological level. How is it that I am relationally involved with other people? And my work is expansive that direction. I'm developing concepts of relation that come from contact improvisation, and that I've developed, and here in this workshop I've unleashed a word that I've been theorizing for the last few months, coming finally to the conclusion that I will call it communion. I think that we move much faster when we're in communion. We're no longer working relationally. We're not working responsively, is what I mean. We're working relationally, but we're not responsive to one another, which includes a delay and choice. But we're moving in communion, which means that as soon as you know something, I know it. So there's no delay in our knowing. I'm looking at the speed of knowing. And in the speed of knowing, communion is faster than response.
And how it is working?
And it's much faster than reaction.
And how it is working, that communion, how you think it's working?
How does it work?
Yeah,
what?
how does it work, the communion?
When my self-sensing is within your body's actions, within your body's when I'm touching the earth through you, then anything that happens within your form, I know. Body, physical states support that knowing. So I spend a lot of time training different ways of being in a mind-body. Right now in this workshop I'm working a lot with what I call a high contrast body, developing a high contrast body. So
these are different methods, yes?
Different methods of helping people to get to those places where they're moving in very communion does not mean similarity. My difference does not change because I'm in communion with you. I'm not interested in everybody being the same. I'm not interested in this ideas of us being one. I'm interested in the fact that we are constantly in motion. I'm interested in identifying myself as motion rather than myself as an object. So myself as the motion that is in constant interaction, interplay, involvement, in relation with another, and that moves in and out of response, into communion, back into response, in constant motion. It's not pop and there I am and I stay there. It's not fixed states. I'm interested in motion, not states.
So maybe you can tell something about the roots of contact improvisation more. I mean, yeah, okay. What are the roots? Direction, like.
Well, I think that the roots of contact are, well, I think within each one of us, unique. Mine are different than yours, and Steve Paxton, who was my teacher at Bennington College, started exploring materials that he was interested in, around materials, in bringing those materials to me to help me with a piece I was doing, which was in which I was getting bruised. It was I was doing a piece where there was a climbing with a man and falling back down to the floor and climbing up and down. And Steve taught me how not to get bruised doing Aikido rolls and different things he'd done with magnesium. Contact didn't have a name yet, so it wasn't a thing. We started doing a lot of rolling, and three of us, Steve, Leon Felder, and myself, rolling and throwing and climbing and whatnot, exploring what that might be, and then we showed it to the Bennington community. Steve was on faculty there, the Bennington dance community, and they were somewhat horrified. Because, quite honestly, women didn't do that. That was, and I think that it would be accurate to say that I was the first woman that Steve, and I don't know if this is true or not, he wasn't letting women do magnesium, but he was teaching me the materials of magnesium. So I think I was lucky and got to do that. And the work that we were doing, that we ended up showing the community, was pretty earth-shattering in a sense. I think I got to be the first woman doing contact in that sense, and having men jump on me or roll around me, and two women in that group.
And how was that for you that time?
How was it? It was exciting. It was. I mean, Steve is magnificent. He is magnificent. He was magnificent, and he's brilliant. First of all, really intelligent, and he taught me how to ask questions, which has been my lifelong a tremendous gift to me. He taught me how to ask questions of physicality, of movement, of moving, which it was in our questioning as we were moving together that something emerged. So, and that something emerged from principles that were maybe initially based in martial arts, but then eventually became rooted in the difference between what we were doing in martial arts, because we were attempting to stay together, to find a centering together rather than to manipulate one another's centers. That's a huge difference. It was figuring out. My being female was never an issue. It just, at least not an issue I was paying attention to. I don't know if it was for Steve or not. But then Emily Siege and Laura Chapman joined, and then there were the five of us exploring. And then Steve said, "What do you think about calling this contact improvisation?" And he wanted to write a grant for the John, or he had written a grant and gotten a grant to do a gig, and he wanted to do it at the John Weber Gallery and take this material that we've been working on. So we went, and we went to New York, and working in parks like this one, we showed people what we had been doing. Steve led the work 5 hours a day. It was all videotaped, and then we go in and we watch those 5 hours, and then and comment on what we saw. And then we went to, then we did 5 hours of performance every day on mats at the John Weber Gallery. And Steve had brought 12, no, I don't know how many people, quite frankly, maybe, I don't really know how many people, but people from Rochester, Danny Lepkoff, and a couple of other people, and people from Oberlin College. And then those of us from Bennington, so altogether, that's where I met Nancy and Kurt Siddle, Nancy Stark-Smith and Kurt Siddle, and we all worked together. Eventually what happened was Steve and I did a piece. He joined me in making my senior thesis at Bennington College, which was called Ben Mutual, B-E-N-N, Mutual, at the Bennington Armory. I was very lucky to have him do that with me. I was somewhat intimidated, I think, by that opportunity. And then what happened? Then we became with Nancy and Kurt, Kurt, Steve, and me, became a quartet that called "You Come, We'll Show You What We Do," and we did the first tour of Contact, and we did that up and down the West Coast, from Vancouver to, well, actually from Los Angeles, San Diego, no, Los Angeles to Vancouver. So that was really the beginning. From then on,
continue.
More and more people. I mean, we were teaching it, and people were joining, and it just got to be a big deal.
But how you then?
And then,
yes.
What happened? I think was critical, really critical. And during a few years after You Come, We'll Show You What We Do, Nancy had the idea of starting a newsletter, because people were doing this thing in all these different places. And that was the roots of the Contact Quarterly, and I think that's had a big impact on its progression. It's just having a place where people could intersect. Prior to that was well before the internet.
Yeah, and how you feel now about Contact Improvisation? I mean, you were at the beginning, and now it's like a big change. Many people are
doing it. I think it's gotten.
You thought it will be that direction, like when you started?
What do you mean? I had no idea it was going to go worldwide. I had no idea it was going to become this virus that just travels through.
But there are also so many ways and approaches to Contact Improvisation now, like not so physical, like completely different.
What are you thinking of?
Different, more like sensual, like different things, or like also therapy, or like different things people are taking from that.
It's interesting. I'm a purist in terms of contact, mostly in that I want people to be exploring principles, the depth of what works, and be relatively disciplined in their inquiry. I'm really not interested in people forming and developing ideologies, meaning ideas of what it is, and then creating a bunch of rules. One of the things that I think has allowed Contact to travel so freely and develop so freely has been the fact that in the very early days the decision was made by all of us, but it was formulated. The base of that was Steve's, which was, why do we want to make that to fix this into a form that at the time there were all these other forms happening, therapy forms, Feldenkrais, Alexander, all these techniques that were required licensing. And people, this was in the very early days, and people were running around teaching Contact. I had just gone up to Vancouver and discovered that one of my students had started teaching Contact in Vancouver before I'd even gotten there, and this was shocking to me because I thought this was my baby, or not my personal baby, but with Steve and Nancy and Kurt, and I thought, whoa, how is it that somebody's taken something that felt as if it was emergent from me and was doing it, is now teaching it. And so I discovered that dance is a giveaway, and that Contact is a giveaway, and that was a lesson in not turning it into an object, and letting it be motion. And Steve's brilliance in suggesting not to license it, that it would be self-cleansing. I can't remember the term he used. But that it would eliminate in the teaching, people who didn't teach well, who didn't know what they were doing, people wouldn't go to take their classes. People would move in the direction of intelligence. That's kind of a deep trust in intelligence, right? And that level of trust, that's been one of the tremendous and one of the many gifts I've gotten that I keep on promoting. I keep producing that as much as I can in every way. So not trying to fix the form and not trying to fix my idea of what it is. No, understanding that the idea I hold today is emotion. So when I teach ideas in motion. Knowing that my job as a teacher is to give away the work in such a way that I'm training people to inquire, to ask questions, to develop the tools to learn and research this work.
So you think that for future development the most important is to make the research all the time and continue being curious?
Absolutely.
And doing research.
Increasing, understanding research and understanding my idea of dance generally, and why I think dancers are brilliant, is because we're researchers. We're researchers into experience. We're not researchers into just one thing or one ideology of movement, but into the whole experience of movement. And I think there's a what's the word I'm looking for? There's a clarity around that we need to constantly be seeking. I hold that discipline of researching experience as dearly as science. I think the inquiry that is scientific inquiry is very important, but it's limited in its potentials to give gifts to humanity without an equal research methodology, which to my mind is dance, and which is a research into experience. So if you're only interested in things and objects and measuring, you'll do science. But if you're interested in the experience and the potentials of experience, I think we're just beginning in that. And as best I possibly can, I'm trying to expose its potentials to do good in the world, to rethink what ecology is, to rethink how humans move and are in relation to one another and the earth. I think of myself, for instance, as a world instead of in the world. What changes? When I'm dancing with a partner, I think of myself as the self sensing that I am, which may include their physicality, may include the floor. Of course it does. May include a wall, a chair, this tree.
Okay, so I would like to thank you for your sharing, and if you would like to add anything else.
I can't think of it. I think I've just
put
Thank
you so much.